The Intergalactic Academy's gymnasium was a marvel of engineering, a place where beings from across the galaxy could train their bodies, test their limits, and bond over shared struggles. The facility adapted itself to the needs of each species, cycling through atmospheres, gravities, and terrains to ensure everyone had an equal challenge. Today, however, the balance in the room felt off. All eyes, or their equivalent, turned toward the figure standing in the entrance. Kara Locke, Earth's first representative to the Academy, stood with one hand on her hip, the other clutching a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. She was smaller than many had imagined, barely reaching the shoulder height of the towering Crothians, but there was something undeniably imposing about her. Perhaps it was the way she moved, smooth, efficient, like a predator conserving energy until the right moment. Or maybe it was the stories that had preceded her arrival, tales of Earth's savage ecosystems and the unyielding nature of its dominant species. Earth, classified as a death world, was infamous in the Galactic Union. The term referred to planets where survival was a constant battle, where environmental conditions pushed life to its limits. High gravity, erratic weather, and aggressive predators were just the beginning. While most death worlds produced little more than hardy plants and the occasional resilient insectoid species, Earth had given rise to humans. Creatures who had not only survived but thrived. As Kara stepped into the gym, the low hum of conversation stilled. The Arthrax students, with their chitinous bodies and delicate antennae, clicked nervously among themselves. A Crothian in the corner leaned toward his companion, his scaled tail twitching uneasily. Even the usually boisterous Valaxians, with their writhing tentacles and booming voices, fell silent. The instructor, a gelatinous being named Grinval, oozed forward to greet her. His multiple eye stalks wavered, reflecting both curiosity and nervousness. "Ah, Miss Locke," he said, his voice a series of moist croaks, translated into Standard Galactic by a nearby device. "Welcome to Galactic Physical Conditioning. We are delighted to have you join us." Kara's lips curved into a polite smile, though her sharp gaze swept the room, taking in the layout, the equipment, and the students watching her. "Thanks," she said. "Looking forward to it." The class, which had been meticulously structured to avoid direct competition, suddenly felt like an arena. Grinval, sensing the tension, clapped his pseudopods together. "All right, class, let's begin with warm-ups. Everyone to their stations." The students scattered, eager to put distance between themselves and the Deathworlder. Kara walked to an open mat, dropping her bag and rolling her shoulders. She began her routine without hesitation, her movements fluid and practiced. Where the other students stretched cautiously, mindful of their species' physical limitations, Kara launched into an explosive series of push-ups, planks, and squats. Her body moved with a precision that was unnerving to watch, muscles rippling under her skin like coiled steel. Ulrich, a tentacled Valaxian known for his arrogance, sidled up to a fellow student. "She's overcompensating," he muttered, his voice a low rumble. "Her species is fragile. They rely on tools and weapons, not physical strength." But even he couldn't deny the efficiency of her movements. By the time the class moved to the obstacle course, the room was filled with whispers. Kara, oblivious or indifferent, tied her hair back and stepped forward to observe the setup. The course was a staple of the class, designed to challenge a variety of species. Walls of differing textures rose alongside zones of shifting gravity, pools of viscous gel and narrow beams suspended over simulated lava pits. Each student approached the obstacles differently, using the unique strengths of their physiology to navigate. Ulrich, with his prehensile tentacles, swung easily from one section to the next, while a Zerlon with 4 spindly legs scrambled up the walls like an insect. When it was Kara's turn, the room grew quiet again. She stepped to the starting line, bouncing slightly on the balls of her feet. The buzzer sounded, and she was off. Her approach was unlike anything the class had seen. She didn't carefully test the surfaces of the walls or hesitate at the gravity zones. Instead, she attacked each obstacle with single-minded determination. Her powerful legs propelled her over the first wall in one leap. The gel pool, which slowed most students to a crawl, barely seemed to register as an impediment. She sprinted through it with sheer force, her feet skimming the surface. When she reached the beams, her balance was uncanny, her movements precise and controlled. By the time she crossed the finish line, her classmates were staring. She wasn't even winded. Grinvald's eye stalks quivered as he tried to regain control of the class. "Excellent performance, Ms. Locke. Now, everyone remember, this is not a competition. We are here to improve together." Kara raised an eyebrow at the instructor but said nothing, moving to the sidelines to watch the others. As the class continued, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Where before there had been camaraderie, now there was unease. Kara's presence had disrupted the delicate balance, her abilities a reminder of the sheer unpredictability of a Deathworlder. Exercise with friends, the expression implied, exercises. The real tipping point came a week later, during the zero-gravity training session. The chamber was a favorite among many species, particularly those accustomed to low-gravity environments. The feather-eye, with their delicate wings, glided effortlessly, while the Xenaxians floated like luminous jellyfish, their tendrils trailing behind them. Kara, however, struggled at first. Her movements were jerky, her attempts to propel herself awkward. Ulrich, emboldened by her apparent weakness, couldn't resist a jab. "Not so tough now, are we, Deathworlder?" he sneered, his tentacles coiling smugly. Kara ignored him, focusing instead on adjusting to the new environment. She observed how others moved, analyzing their techniques. Within minutes, her clumsy flails transformed into controlled, deliberate motions. She began to move with grace, her body a study in adaptation. That was when the incident happened. Ulrich, still showing off, swung too close to Kara while practicing a grappling maneuver. A miscalculation sent him spinning toward her, his tentacles flailing. Without thinking, Kara reached out to steady him. Her grip was firm, too firm. A loud crack echoed through the chamber, and Ulrich let out a piercing screech, his tentacles curling protectively around his injured limb. The room froze. For a moment no one moved. Kara's face paled as she realized what had happened. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice filled with genuine remorse. "I didn't mean to." Grinvald rushed forward, his pseudopods waving frantically. "Everyone remain calm. Ulrich to the medbay immediately." As the injured Valaxian was escorted out, the rest of the class stared at Kara with a mixture of fear and awe. The whispers started almost immediately. "Did you see how easily she broke him? She wasn't even trying. Imagine if she had been angry." Kara stood frozen, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She wanted to explain, to tell them it had been an accident, but the words caught in her throat. She could feel their eyes on her, the weight of their judgment pressing down like a physical force. When the class ended, Kara lingered behind, sitting alone in a corner of the chamber. Her shoulders slumped, and she buried her face in her hands. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she felt the full weight of what it meant to be a Deathworlder. "They're scared of me," she whispered to herself, and she couldn't blame them. The zero-gravity chamber was silent after the class had ended, the last echoes of alien chatter fading as students departed in small, uneasy groups. Kara stayed behind, her body still save for the occasional twitch of her fingers. The weight of what had happened pressed down on her chest, though the chamber was devoid of the gravity she was used to. Her thoughts spun as though caught in the artificial zero-G. Her eyes followed the faint glowing lines of the chamber's safety grid, tracing them as if they held answers. She replayed the incident with Ulrich over and over in her mind. She had acted on instinct, a reflex born from a lifetime on Earth, where quick reactions meant the difference between survival and disaster. But here, among her alien classmates, her instinct had marked her as dangerous. Footsteps, or their alien equivalents, sounded behind her. Kara glanced over her shoulder to see Instructor Grinval's gelatinous form jiggling toward her. His eye stalks focused entirely on her. He paused a few feet away, giving her space. "Miss Locke," he said, his translator device conveying a tone that was both cautious and kind. "Are you all right?" Kara let out a hollow laugh. "Shouldn't I be asking you that? I just accidentally broke one of my classmates." Grinval's eye stalks waved slowly. "Ulrichs will recover. Valaxian exoskeletons are resilient, and the Academy Medbay is equipped to handle such injuries, but—" He hesitated, his gelatinous mass rippling slightly. "The others are uneasy." Kara sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Yeah, I noticed." Grinval moved closer, his form shifting as though to express sympathy. "You must understand, Miss Locke. Your species is unique. Few here have encountered a Deathworlder before. The stories they've heard are exaggerated, of course, but fear thrives on ignorance." "They think I'm a monster," Kara said quietly, more to herself than to him. "No," Grenville replied firmly, his eye stalks locking onto her. "They think you're unpredictable. There's a difference, and unpredictability in this context is something we can work on." "You've—" Kara raised an eyebrow. "Work on?" Grinvale extended a pseudopod in a gesture that mimicked a shrug. "You're new here, Miss Locke, as are they. This academy was founded on the principle of unity, but unity takes time and effort. I've seen students of vastly different species overcome fear and misunderstanding to form lifelong bonds. You are no exception." Kara appreciated his words, but they did little to lift the weight in her chest. "What do you suggest?" "Patience," he said simply, "and perhaps a demonstration of control." She frowned. "Control?" Grenval's eye stalks twitched in what might have been amusement. "You've shown them your strength, Miss Locke. Now, show them your restraint." Kara mulled over his words long after he left. The zero-gravity chamber's lights dimmed as it shifted into standby mode, signaling that it was time to leave. She gathered her belongings and made her way through the Academy's sprawling corridors, her boots echoing faintly in the metallic halls. The Academy itself was a marvel, a space station orbiting a neutral star in the galaxy's center. Its architecture was a blend of countless cultures, with flowing organic curves interspersed with sharp crystalline angles. Every corridor was designed to accommodate a variety of species, with sections of floor that glowed faintly to guide nocturnal creatures and walls embedded with nutrient dispensers for photosynthetic beings. Kara's quarters were small but comfortable, located in a section reserved for species requiring Earth-like gravity and atmosphere. She collapsed onto her bed, staring up at the ceiling. She thought about Earth, its chaotic beauty, its dangers, and the people she'd left behind. She missed it, of course, but she'd known what she was signing up for when she agreed to be the first human at the Academy. She had wanted to prove that her species belonged here, that humans could thrive among the stars. But now, she wasn't so sure. The next day, Kara entered the gymnasium with a sense of determination. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do, but she knew she couldn't let things stay the way they were. Her classmates avoided her gaze as she approached, their conversations halting as she drew near. She felt the weight of their apprehension, but she forced herself to keep her head high. Grunwald greeted the class as usual, his pseudopods gesturing toward the day's activities. "Today we will focus on cooperative exercises," he announced, his voice carrying a note of enthusiasm. "Pair up, please." "Ah." The room froze. Kara could see the tension ripple through her classmates as they exchanged uneasy glances. No one wanted to be her partner. Grinval's eye stalks swiveled toward her. "Miss Locke, would you mind demonstrating with me?" Kara blinked in surprise, but nodded. "Sure." The first exercise involved a weighted sphere designed to test coordination and teamwork. Greenval explained that pairs would pass the sphere back and forth, keeping it aloft while navigating a series of obstacles. Kara took her position opposite him, her movements careful and deliberate. The sphere was heavier than it looked, its density shifting unpredictably as it moved. Greenval lobbed it toward her, and she caught it with ease. She tossed it back, mindful of her strength. The exercise was simple, but as they moved through the obstacles, Kara focused on maintaining control. Her motions were precise, her throws calculated. She could feel the eyes of her classmates on her, their unease gradually giving way to curiosity. When the demonstration ended, Greenval turned to the class. "Now, pair up and begin." There was a moment of hesitation before a Fahithi student stepped forward, her delicate wings fluttering nervously. "I'll partner with Kara," she said, her voice soft but steady. Kara nodded, offering her a small smile. "Thanks." The Faithari introduced herself as Lyrian, and they began the exercise together. Lyrian was lighter than Kara, her body built for gliding rather than brute strength. Kara adjusted her movements to match Lyrian's pace, ensuring that her throws were gentle enough for her partner to handle. As they worked together, Lyrian gradually relaxed, her movements becoming more fluid. By the time they completed the exercise, she was smiling. "You're not as scary as I thought," she admitted. Kara chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." The rest of the class watched their interaction with interest. Slowly, other students began to warm up to her. By the end of the session, a few even approached her with questions about Earth, their curiosity outweighing their fear. Later that evening, Kara found herself sitting in the Academy's communal lounge, nursing a cup of something that passed for coffee. She was joined by Lyrian and a Crothian named Zarn, who had tentatively started a conversation about Earth's wildlife. Kara described the jungles, deserts, and oceans of her home planet, sharing stories of creatures that could only exist on a death world. As the conversation flowed, she realized that her classmates weren't just afraid of her, they were fascinated. They wanted to understand her, to bridge the gap between their worlds. And maybe, just maybe, she could help them do that. The days following Kara's zero-gravity incident were an exercise in rebuilding trust, if trust had ever existed to begin with. She couldn't blame her classmates for their unease. They had grown up in environments that emphasized harmony, where survival didn't require brute force or the reflexes of a predator. To them, she was a walking anomaly, her every action a potential danger. Still, she couldn't allow their fear to define her. She had come here to prove that humans could belong among the stars, and she wasn't about to give up now. Kara spent her nights researching. The Academy's database was vast, containing information on the biology, culture, and behavior of every species represented. She immersed herself in their worlds, learning about the delicate antennae of the Arthrax, the regenerating exoskeletons of the Valaxians, and the Crothians' reliance on their thick, scaly hides. Each species had its own vulnerabilities and strengths, and Kara made a mental catalog of everything that could help her bridge the gap between herself and her classmates. When she wasn't studying, she was training, alone in the dead hours of the night. She worked on fine-tuning her movements, focusing on control and precision. If her strength was a liability here, she would turn it into an asset by showing that she could wield it responsibly. She practiced lifting weights with just enough force to balance them, simulated grappling maneuvers that emphasized finesse over power, and ran drills in the zero-gravity chamber to improve her adaptability. Each session left her drenched in sweat and aching, but she welcomed the pain. It was proof that she was making progress. The next gym class was a turning point, though not in the way Kara had hoped. Greenval had planned a cooperative exercise requiring small groups to work together to complete a timed obstacle course. The course featured gravity fluctuations, simulated quicksand, and walls requiring multiple species' strengths to scale. Kara was assigned to a group with Ulrix, the Valaxian she had injured, alongside a Zerlan and a Fethari. The tension was immediate. Ulrich's tentacles curled protectively around his body as he eyed Kara warily. The Zerlan, a wiry creature with spindly legs and a nervous demeanor, kept glancing between her and the instructor, as if hoping Grinvald would intervene. Only the Fethari, Lyrian, seemed willing to meet her gaze, though even her wings twitched with uncertainty. Kara took a deep breath. "Look," she said, addressing the group, "I know things didn't start off great between us, but we can't get through this course if we don't work together." Ulrich's clicking voice carried a note of skepticism. "And what happens when your strength goes out of control again? I'd rather not spend another day in the med bay." Kara held his gaze, her expression calm. "I get it. What happened before was my fault, and I'm sorry, but I've been working on it, on control. Give me a chance to prove it." Lyrian stepped forward, her soft, melodic voice breaking the stalemate. "We'll all fail if we don't cooperate. Let's focus on the task at hand." Reluctantly, the others agreed. Grinvald signaled the start, and the group moved into the course. The first section required navigating a series of gravity shifts. Lyrian took the lead, her wings giving her an advantage in the low gravity zones. Kara followed, keeping her movements measured to avoid disrupting the others. Ulrich used his tentacles to anchor himself, while the Zerlan scrambled nimbly along the walls. The second section was the quicksand simulation. Lyrian's light frame allowed her to cross with ease, but Ulrich struggled, his tentacles sinking into the viscous surface. Without hesitation, Kara stepped forward. "Grab on," she said, extending her arm. Ulrich hesitated, his tentacles twitching. Finally, he wrapped them around her forearm, and she pulled him free with a steady, controlled motion. He said nothing as they continued, but the tension in his posture eased slightly. The final section was the wall climb. The Zerlan scurried up first, using his legs to find footholds that others couldn't. Lyrian followed, her wings helping her glide to higher ledges. Ulrich and Kara were left at the base, the Valaxian's tentacles wrapping around protrusions as he ascended. Kara waited, letting him get halfway before she began her climb. The wall was challenging, its surface uneven and slick. Kara focused on her grip, careful not to dislodge any handholds. When she reached the top, Lyrian extended a hand to help her over the edge. As the group crossed the finish line, Grinvald announced their time, 4th place out of 7 teams. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a failure either. Ulrich glanced at Kara, his tentacles twitching in what might have been an awkward attempt at a nod. "You didn't crush anything this time," he muttered. Kara snorted. "High praise, thanks." Lyrian smiled, her wings fluttering gently. That was a good start. Over the next few weeks, Kara's relationships with her classmates began to shift. The obstacle course incident had proven that she could be a team player. And while some still kept their distance, others started to approach her with cautious curiosity. She joined group study sessions, learning about the intricacies of alien technology and biology, while sharing stories about Earth's diverse ecosystems. The Hearthraks, in particular, were fascinated by her descriptions of Earth's insects, comparing them to the hive-like structures of their own culture. Her reputation as a Deathworlder didn't fade, but it began to take on a new context. Where once it had been a source of fear, it now carried a certain respect. Her classmates came to see her as more than just her strength. They saw her determination, her adaptability, and her willingness to learn. Even Ulrich, though still wary, occasionally joined her for training sessions, his tentacles looping awkwardly around the weights she helped him adjust. One day, during a break between classes, Kara found herself sitting with Lyrian in the Academy's central atrium. The space was vast and open, its walls covered in luminescent vines that pulsed gently with light. Students of every species mingled here, their conversations a symphony of clicks, hums, and whistles. Kara noticed right away that extrasensory attention from the members of COM Larian sipped a nutrient drink, her feathers catching the light as she turned to Kara. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked. Kara leaned back, staring at the ceiling where the vines wove intricate patterns. "Every day," she admitted. "It's not an easy place to live, but it's home. There's something about the chaos of it, the storms, the wildlife, even the people, that feels alive." Larian tilted her head, her eyes thoughtful. "You brought a piece of that chaos here, I think. But it's not a bad thing. Sometimes we need a little chaos to grow." Kara smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through her. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she felt like she belonged, not just as a student, but as a bridge between worlds. As she sat there, surrounded by the hum of alien life, she realized that the journey to acceptance wasn't just about proving herself. It was about showing her classmates that they, too, could adapt, grow, and overcome their fears. Together, they were stronger than the sum of their parts. A truth that extended beyond the walls of the academy and into the galaxy they were all a part of.